Peter Kyle, Labour's shadow Northern Ireland Secretary. Good morning to you, Peter Kyle.
Good morning, Julia. It's you and I keeping the wheels going over the summer, is it?
Well, I mean, frankly, I've been keeping the rosé wine going in France, but I'm back now. I'm pretending to be at work, as indeed every other in politics is. Look, let's talk about the biggest story going around at the moment, and that, of course, is the migrant situation. First of all, I want to ask you just about this new memo that's apparently come out in the Home Office predicting that the migrant crisis is going to last at least another 5 years. All their contracts expect they're going to be housing people, dealing with processing people in the crisis levels we're dealing with now for that long. Are you surprised by that? What's your reaction?
Well, of course I'm not surprised by it, because this is a problem that's been growing for 5 years. 5 years ago, there were 430 migrants crossing the channel in small boats. Now it's 46,000 every year. So we've got a problem that's been growing and not been tackled at its root causes. So for as long as the government is chasing headlines rather than actually dealing with the underlying causes that's driving migration in the first place, but also failing to tackle it. Well, of course, there's always going to be migration. We see it both in countries right across the world where there is war, where there is instability, where there's political instability. These are the areas which are driving it. So we see it mostly coming from, if you think about the people whose lives were lost, and let's pay a moment's respect to those lives that are lost in the channel, it looks like all of them came from Afghanistan. We know what's happening in Afghanistan, and I think we all understand the reasons why people are fleeing Afghanistan.
Yes, so fleeing Afghanistan, but not fleeing France. So when you say we've got to tackle the root causes, what are the root causes? I would say the root cause is that people don't want to stay in France.
Well, so actually, Julia, this is a really complicated situation. I understand that. I'm not making out today that it is a simple problem or it's a simple solution. So we have the driving forces of migration, which I've just mentioned. These migrants also pass through many countries before they come to Britain. The only way we can solve this that particular challenge is to work really closely with the individual countries that people travel through, but also to make sure we work with the European Union itself, because they have a targeted programme. We should have a voice around that. And then there is a particular issue also with France. Now, relations with France are not great. You know they're not great. They could be improved. So we need a much more coherent, strident, effective diplomatic relationship with France, so that we can tackle that issue with people leaving the shores in France.
I always hear this from Labour politicians. What is it in terms of your relationship with France? You're going to take a nice bottle of Fizz over? I don't know what. Suddenly we're going to have a great relationship with France, with Labour in charge, and then France is going to get their act together when it comes to stopping the migrants getting into those rickety boats and coming to the UK. Well, when you see, by the way, I don't know, what a good relationship have meant that those French boats wouldn't have escorted that overloaded dinghy on Saturday that left 6 people dead and 50 needing to be rescued to British waters. Would they have dealt with it beforehand if Labour were being nicey-nicey with Macron?
Well, don't forget that there was, not so long ago, a meeting with France and some of its neighbouring countries to discuss this precise issue. Yep. Priti Patel, as the Home Secretary at the time, was invited, and then she was uninvited at the very last minute because of a spat between the two countries. Now, if you're being uninvited to those meetings where the problem is being discussed in the first place, then the British perspective is not going to be even included in the discussion. So I think we can't ever stand up to France or the European Union or anything just in case they don't do anything about protecting their borders and our borders. I mean, why don't we just wave the white flag? I don't think anything I've said would lead you to that conclusion.
That's exactly
we need a
what
constructive relationship. But no, it's not. If we are being uninvited, if we're not around the table, then we're not. Was this around the time
the French were threatening to cut off electricity supplies to the Channel Islands?
So what we need to do is have a good conversation with France. We need to have a good working relationship with France and the European Union to tackle this issue. Secondly, or thirdly, what we need to do is actually make sure that we can have a dedicated task force within the National Crime Agency so that we can actually go after these people smugglers. The people smugglers, the industry of people smuggling is growing. It's not diminishing, Julia. We need to make sure that we can focus resources where it is worthwhile. It is not good money, value for money, spending it on the Rwanda scheme. It is good good value for money, going after the people smugglers themselves and locking them up.
Okay.
But at the moment, the prosecutions of people smugglers has fallen 23% while the problem is growing. Nothing illustrates.
Sounds like you're blaming the French there. That won't go down well.
Of this government more than that.
OK, let's talk about the BB Stockholm. Look, I think everyone who's watching this will know that a barge where 500 migrants out of 100,000 who've come in recent years could be housed is not the solution to any of the problems. There's been a lot of information coming out about asylum seekers, I think 39 in total, spending 4 days on that barge in the Dorset port of Portland, while it was known that they'd had Legionella bacteria in the water supply. Do you think that any government minister should resign over this?
We need to get to the bottom of what happened. But look, the reason why I think ministers have proven themselves incompetent is because they are chasing headlines. They're not chasing solutions. So as you've just said yourself, you know, all of the enormous amount of publicity and effort that's gone in from the Home Office into this one barge, actually taking 1 day's worth of migrants crossing the English Channel at the moment. We know that it's not a solution to the fundamental problem we face, but this isn't what the Home Office wants at the moment. What this government wants is headlines. They want the row, they want to make sure they have dividing lines, but none of this is about governance. None of this is about the government solving the problems our country faces. So for as long as they do this, we will be talking about Rwanda, we will be talking about barges, we will be talking about other countries, but we will not be talking about the things that will actually solve the problem.
OK, so you'd
itself.
Get rid of the barges. Just want to clarify that. It's been a bit unclear, Labour policy on this last couple of days.
Well, it shouldn't be unclear, Julia, because I've just outlined a 3-point plan involving stopping migrants leaving in the first place, working with the countries they
specifically on the barges,
and locking up the people smugglers. And if the government did that, we wouldn't need the barges in the first place because people wouldn't be coming here.
I am sure
So
within 6 months of Labour being in power, the problem will be solved. And let's chat in those 6 months after, if and when Labour win the next election. Would Labour be getting rid of the barges?
What we want to do is have a solution where the barges aren't needed, because we're tackling the issues.
So would Labour be getting rid of the barges? You don't like the barge, you think it's awful, so you get rid of them. If we can solve the problem. We're focusing. So we're going to be focusing on the problem. You'd keep them until you solve the problem?
Well, Julia, we don't know when the election is going to come. When you look at the issues our country faces, whether it is inflation, whether it is waiting lists on the NHS, which are now 7.9 million, or whether it is the out-of-control asylum process that we have, we don't know how much worse it's going to get between now and the election.
So you'll keep the barges?
We don't know whether there's going to be another mini-budget that's going to blow a hole. What we will do is we will start tackling the problem at its root cause.
And you'll keep the barges?
And we will start on day one solving the big problems our country faces. We don't want to be using barges, but we've got to see what we will inherit.
Let's talk about the NHS. Let's talk about the NHS, because patients trying to, with words of the Daily Mail, escape Labour's Welsh NHS. We've seen an almost 40% rise in the last 2 years of people from Wales actually trying to use English hospitals. We've had Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, who was on the show earlier, offering to Welsh and Scottish health ministers, you can use our facilities, even private healthcare facilities available in England. If Labour's so good at running the NHS and the Tories are so bad, why are waiting lists in Wales, where Labour are in charge, devolved power over the NHS, why are waiting lists longer in Wales? The
dysfunction that this government in Westminster has introduced into the way our entire United Kingdom is being run.
They're not in charge of the NHS in Wales.
Of our United Kingdom. They set the budgets for the NHS in Wales. There is a fundamental relationship between the United Kingdom NHS and all the constituent parts of the United Kingdom. That is unavoidable. When you look at the way that Steve Barclay runs the NHS in England, we now have 7.9 million people. 7.9 million people who are so waiting for treatment that they're not going to be economically active fully in the economy. This is infecting all parts of the running of our society, from health to education, right through to economic productivity. Why isn't the NHS in
Wales better run under Labour, since you're better running the NHS than the Tories?
The person who is least likely to be able to help parts of the NHS in other parts of the United Kingdom is the man who is running it so poorly here. There are problems with health right across the United Kingdom. What we need to do is get a Labour government in Westminster working constructively with the Labour government in Wales and across all the other parts of the United Kingdom.
Can I clarify? clarify. You're saying that the Labour Party in Wales can't run the NHS better or even as well as it's badly run in England because you're stopped there. What's the point of that being a devolved power if you haven't got enough power to do it properly? What's the point of the Welsh government if that's the case?
When we saw from 1997 to 2010 incremental progress in all parts of the United Kingdom. That's because we had the government here in the Westminster working constructively with all parts of the United Kingdom to tackle the challenges that we face. When you see that partnership, you see waiting lists and you see the waiting times reduce in all parts of the United Kingdom. We've got to get back to that point. Considering that the Conservatives call themselves the Conservative and Unionist Party, they are appalling at working with other parts of the Union, and that is fundamentally shaking our union to pieces.
I want to get two more subjects in. One is something I know you want to highlight in terms of teachers, but I want to ask you about ULEZ. Is it right that Labour have now basically dropped your plan to spread these ULEZ-style clean air zones around cities around the UK after your narrow defeat in the Uxbridge by-election, when basically local people, drivers, said, you know what, we don't want to have to pay extra to drive our cars in our local streets?
We are fully committed to making sure that every person across the United Kingdom, whether you live in cities or in rural areas, have clean air. We are committed to that. What we want to do is make sure that when we roll it out, we do it in a way that takes everybody with us, and it makes sure that no particular group of people is disproportionately impacted. So
you've dropped the policy.
So that's why we're really pleased. That's why we're really pleased that Sadiq Khan has rolled out a whole series more of mitigation measures, so that those people on lower incomes will get more support, so that we can make sure that people across London and other cities are going to be access to free air. Okay. Look, Julia, 500 lives are saved in London by these policies.
Free air, what you mean is clean air, but the air is clean in London already.
Clean air.
I know that's what you meant. The air is already clean. The air is cleaner now than it was 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
And still 500 lives in London are being saved by clean air mitigation policies.
Nonsense.
So we need to make sure that and particularly young people have access to clean air all the time, and we can move forward with this. We do make sure we do it in a way though that takes everybody with us, and that some people are not disproportionately impacted, particularly those people on lower incomes.
I know you want to talk about your pledge. It's reheating a pledge to recruit 6,500 new teachers. We certainly need them, don't we, given that our youngsters have been so failed by their schools in the last few years?
We really do, but not just any old teachers. We need to make sure we can recruit expert teachers, because what we're seeing is that out of the 30 subjects that are being taught in our state schools, 23 of them in the last year are having fewer experts in the classroom teaching. So what we want are world-class teachers, experts in the classroom. We're going to obviously get this recruitment drive underway so that we can pay for it, fully funded, by cancelling the tax break for private schools. This is a fully funded measure, but also there's other challenges as well. We have a recruitment challenge that we have to face, which we've got plans for, but we also have, which I've just outlined, but we also have a retention challenge as well, because 1 in 10 teachers left teaching in the last year, and we need to make sure that teaching is a profession that people enjoy, they get the training and support in the classroom, plus it is the rewarding profession that we want it to be again, because we need to make sure we can turbocharge state education so that we can actually tackle the challenges that our whole country faces, not just in the short term, but into the long term too.
Peter Carr, we got through a lot there. Really appreciate you joining us. Peter Carr, Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary, Labour MP for Hope as well.